Hey there, everyone. Bryan here from the Oraculos School of Astrology with yet another question and answer segment where practicing astrologers bring me their questions and I provide them answers based on my astrological practice. If you're enjoying these Q&A segments and you'd like to work with either myself or an OSA certified astrologer, then by all means check out our website where you can book yourself a high-quality astrological consultation today. Also, I answer many of these questions and more in my book, Mastering Traditional Astrology, A Depth of Beginning in the Celestial Art, which you can buy a copy of on Amazon.com. And if you'd like to become a professional astrologer, then check out our Professional Astrologers Diploma Program, as well as our Medical Astrologers Diploma Program, by visiting the education page of our website.
So my question's a little bit complex, but I'm going to try and break it down. So my question is about what does it mean to have the ruler of the 12th house in the 12th house, especially if it's a malefic planet that is strong, like Mars and Aries.
So the question is, what do we do with a planet that is ruling the 12th house and in the 12th house? And the example is Mars in Aries. Now, there is an aphorism, and usually I'm better at this, but my brain is blanking right now. But there's an aphorism that states that when a malefic planet is in any of its major essential dignities, that planet is like a noble warrior who scorns to hurt his enemy. When a malefic planet is in any of its essential dignities, such as domicile and exaltation, or domicile or exaltation, that planet is like a noble warrior scorning to do harm to his enemy. And this goes back to a larger point that we find within the corpus of Jean-Baptiste Morin du Villefranche, where he says that any planet that is in its essential dignities is going to be essentially dignified for the entire world. So if we have a planet such as Mars, for example, Mars in Aries, and that Mars in Aries is oriental, not combust, not retrograde, which means the Mars is direct in motion, and the planet is also swift in motion, then that planet is going to be, or in this example, that Mars is going to be a benefic planet for the entire world. And where that Mars is placed within the natal chart is going to specify where that Mars is acting. However, in general, that Mars is going to be benefic for the entire world because any planet in its domicile or exaltation and not having any major external afflictions is going to be considered a benefic planet for the entire world. Conversely, any planet that is in any of its major essential debilities, and by major, I mean peregrination is a major essential debility, but more so if a planet is in its detriment or if a planet is in its fall, then that planet is considered to be a malefic for the entire world. And this is true for the moon, Venus, and Jupiter. So just because a planet is malefic or benefic intrinsically due to its fundamental nature, it doesn't actually change the fact that every planet, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon, if they are essentially dignified in their domicile or exaltation, those planets are going to be benefics for the entire world. Similarly, if any of those planets, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, or the Moon, are essentially debilitated in their detriment or fall, they're going to be malefic planets for the entire world, and their maleficence is going to be made specific based on the house or houses that those planets rule and that those planets occupy. So that's one part of the conversation. Now, a second part of the conversation is that in the case of Mars in Aries in the 12th house, we have yet another aphorism arising. And that aphorism is that if a planet is a bad planet in a good state in a bad house, such as Mars, a bad planet, essentially dignified in his domicile in a good state, accidentally debilitated in the 12th house, a bad house, then that planet is not going to add more to the negativity that we find in the 12th house, even though its nature is to be bad. Because the celestial fact of that Mars is that Mars is in his own domicile. And so he's not going to thrash out or act out when in his own domicile, because when we're in our own home, all of us feel a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more at ease. And even if our normal tendency in life is to kill everyone, when we're in our home, we probably don't feel the sort of angst to kill everyone as if when we are far from our home. So Mars in his own home in a bad house doesn't add to the badness of that house. However, he also doesn't prevent the badness of the 12th house either. Whereas if we had Jupiter in the 12th house in his own domicile of either Sagittarius or Pisces, then that Jupiter, because his nature is good and his state is good, that Jupiter would specifically prevent us from experiencing the negativity to be found in the 12th house. So here's another rule. If a planet is in its domicile or exaltation, and that planet is naturally a good planet, such as Jupiter, Venus, and we can also include the moon in this. We probably should also include the sun in this. If that planet is specifically Jupiter or Venus, and that Jupiter and Venus are in a very good state, meaning that they're either in their domicile or exaltation, and they're in terrible houses, the 6th house, the 8th house, or the 12th house, those planets will not only alter the badness of those three houses, but those planets will also bring out the things that are good about those three houses. So if we have a very good Jupiter in the 6th house, then that very good Jupiter can give us good pets and good employees. If we have a very good Jupiter in the 8th house, that very good Jupiter can protect us from having many near-death experiences, but it could also bring us wealth from our ancestors and potentially wealth from our partner. If we have a very good Jupiter in the 12th house, then that Jupiter can also be something that saves us from having a lot of debilitating health concerns, because the 12th house is on the spectrum of bad health. And it can also be a protective balm in general, where even when we're in the most challenging circumstances, we always come out sunny side up, because we have a powerful benefic planet doing powerful protective work in a bad house. Conversely, if we have that same Jupiter in detriment or fall in any of those bad houses, then that Jupiter isn't going to prevent any of the evil of those houses, but it also won't add to the evil of those houses. So it's like, I can't really protect you because I'm Jupiter in my detriment or my fall, but there's nothing natural about me that's going to increase the evil from any of these bad houses, because I'm just not a bad planet to begin with. Whereas if Mars is in his detriment or fall and in a bad house, he's a bad planet in a bad state in a bad house, and he definitely is going to lash out and thrash out and produce evil in those houses, the 6th house, the 8th house, and the 12th house, because a bad planet, intrinsically bad, in a bad state that corresponds with its intrinsic badness in a bad house, clearly is going to want to kill somebody or clearly is going to want to negatively, throw some poison in the well so that everybody gets sick or something like that, because that is what happens when you add bad to bad to bad to bad. So that is the overall theme in terms of the various states of the planet. It's a little bit complicated. Like I said earlier, in this specific example of having Mars in Aries, in the 12th house, a bad planet in a good state in a bad house, isn't going to prevent the evil of the house, but it's also not going to increase the evil of the house, because that Mars is in a state of relaxation, that Mars has put his swords down, and that Mars is okay. He's not going to stop the boogeyman from coming for your ankles while you sleep in the nighttime, but he's also not going to cause the boogeyman to come for your ankles when you sleep in the nighttime. Now, let's say this Mars were the ruler of the 7th house in the 12th house. That's always a problem. Whenever we have the ruler of our 7th house in the 12th house, that's a big problem, because the ruler of the 7th house signifies our loved partners within this lifetime, and the 12th house signifies our secret suffering, our sorrow, the things that cause us to cry in the dark when nobody is watching, and also our self-undoing and our hidden enemies. So we don't want our everlasting lover in this lifetime to be in our 12th house of hidden enemies and secret sorrow and silent suffering and self-undoing. It's just not a good omen. In any system of astrology, I'd imagine, even systems of astrology that are supercalifragilisticexpialidociously positive and don't want to say bad things about anything, I can't imagine that any system would ever want to have the ruler of his 7th house in the 12th house. Similarly speaking, having that Mars also ruling the 12th house cusp is going to be potentially problematic. This would happen if a person has Scorpio on their 7th house cusp and Aries on their 12th house cusp. In a situation like that, the ruler of my spouse and the ruler of my self-undoing are the same planet. That's already not a good thing. It's not the best omen in the world. I tend to always make a mental note of that whenever I see that within a chart. However, it's definitely worst if you have the ruler of your 7th house as the ruler of your 12th house in the 12th house. It's definitely going to be worse, because even if that Mars is in Aries, that Mars could be on the top of the mountain at the highest height of heaven, that Mars is still going to represent your partner in your house of hidden enemies, which isn't good for anybody's relationships. It's going to be even further amplified the more debilitated that Mars is. Now, if that Mars is super debilitated, but you and that Mars, your ruler of the ascendant and the ruler of the 7th house, have a wonderful trine relationship with each other, then maybe you and your partner are getting along quite well. However, maybe your partner is sick, maybe your partner is super stressed out, maybe a partner has any list of calamities going on with them personally, and that's getting in the way of the relationship, even though the two of you have a wonderful relationship. And the reason for that is because the 12th house for you is the 6th house of sickness and stress for your partner. So with everything, we always have to do a full delineation of everything. But the moral of today's story is that a bad planet in a good state in a bad house isn't going to increase the badness of the house, but it also isn't going to act in a bad way, which is a wonderful thing to say from a theoretical perspective, because, and truthfully in astrology, there are many wonderful things to say from a theoretical perspective, but at the end of the day, no one wants their lover in their 12th house. So it doesn't matter how many aphorisms or theorems we throw at that Mars in Aries in the 12th house, ruling the 12th house and ruling the 7th house. Nobody wants their lover in their 12th house. And that goes beyond astrology, and that's just a fact of life. We do not want our lover to be in the 12th house. So I gave you the theory, but I also gave you the meat. So you decide what you want to do with that. But at the end of the day, we have to always do a thorough assessment of the entire chart and also of everything that's happening to any planet before we can say anything about a planet specifically. Okay, does that make sense in the universe?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope you enjoy our Q&A segment, and if you have astrological questions that you'd like for me to answer, then please feel free to share them in the comment section down below. And remember, my book, Mastering Traditional Astrology, A Depth of Beginning in the Celestial Art, is now out and ready to be purchased. So pick yourself up a copy by visiting Amazon.com today. And if you want to become a professional astrologer, please feel free to check out any of the diploma programs that we offer here at the Oraculos School of Astrology by visiting oraculosastrology.com. I hope to see you in class soon.